I will begin by showing the modified pen grasp. Your index finger and your thumb, they are going to be opposite of each other along the instrument right there. Your middle finger is going to come right below and just above the functional shank, and your ring finger will stay very close. It will be the fulcrum and resting on top of the tooth. You want the other part of the instrument to lay on top of the knuckle right there, and then you also want to maintain a C shape. Just to also show, you don't want to have space opening up in between the fingers. Those three fingers are going to be glued together almost. Now, in trying to find the correct end of the instrument, you're going to want to insert on the distal part of the tooth. As you can see, the terminal shank is parallel to the long axis of the tooth, and the functional shank is going across over the occlusal surface of the tooth that you want to explore. You can also insert it on the mesial side, and the tip of the instrument is still hugging the tooth that you want to explore. Now, if it was the incorrect side, I will insert it here on the distal. You can see the terminal shank is coming across the buccal side of the tooth, and that is incorrect. If you were to try and insert it on the mesial side of the tooth, the tip does not hug the tooth, and it would be damaging the gingiva that is in there. Now, to explore tooth number 30, I'm going to get into my modified pen grasp. I'm going to rest my fulcrum finger, which is my ring finger, about 2 to 3 teeth away from tooth number 30, and I'm going to start at the distal line angle, and I'm going to start with small rocking motions until I get to the back side where I will roll. I can say side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot. Now I find that my tip is in the distal part of the tooth, and using motions in my wrist, I will make vertical strokes along the back side of the tooth. Vertical strokes. Another thing to point out as well is when starting on the distal line angle of the tooth, my elbow will be up and away from me, and as I make my way down into the back side, my elbow is tucked in by my body. And I will try that one more time. I'm gonna go start at the distal line angle and small vertical strokes. Side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot and roll, side to side pivot and roll, making sure that the tip is adapted alongside of the tooth with each movement, and go up and down, up and down, up and down. And now I notice that my middle finger had come off of the shank, and I want to make sure that that does stay on there, because as I'm feeling on the back side of the tooth, I want to know if there is anything that should not be there, such as calculus. And with that, it would be vibrating against the tip, and my middle finger is the first one that would notice that discrepancy. Now, in order to go towards the mesial, we are going to start at the distal line angle again, and we're going to do oblique strokes. And oblique is across like this, as opposed to going up and down, going towards the distal. Going towards the mesial, we will be doing a little slanted stroke. So with this one, my elbow will be first starting close to my body, and as I make my way through to the back, elbow will be up. Okay, making sure I have modified pen grasp. Starting back here, okay, tuck my elbow in, and I'm gonna do side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot. And here's where I'm going to start to want to roll the instrument, and I'm going to make sure my thumb and my index finger don't come close together. Side to side pivot roll, side to side pivot roll, side to side pivot roll. Now I am on the mesial surface of the tooth, and I'm going to use wrist motions again to explore the mesial surface of the tooth. And I will demonstrate that one more time. Starting at the distal line angle. Let's make that, okay. Tuck my elbow in, and I'm gonna do side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot and roll, side to side pivot and roll, side to side pivot and roll. And now my elbow is up a little bit more, and I am using wrist motions to do vertical strokes along the mesial of that tooth. Now I'm going to do tooth number 29, the one right in front. We're going to check our modified pen grasp again, making sure everything is correct. I'm going to put my fulcrum 2 to 3 teeth away, starting at the distal line angle of tooth 29. It is a smaller tooth, it is a premolar, and I'm going to do the vertical strokes and roll when I get into the distal part of the tooth. Side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, roll, and I'm rolled into the tooth back there, and I'm going to do wrist motions to check the back side of the tooth. And I will do that one more time. Starting from the distal line angle, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, tip adapting towards the surface of the tooth, and I'm rolling and I'm in the back side and I'm doing wrist motions on the back side of the tooth. Now, to go towards the mesial, we're going to start at the distal line angle again in the small oblique strokes. Elbow tucked in, and elbow will go up as I get to the back there. Small oblique strokes. Side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot and roll, side to side pivot and roll. And as I'm in the back here, wrist rocking to check the mesial surface of the tooth. One more time. Starting from the distal line angle, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot and roll, side to side pivot and roll, and wrist rocking to get to the back side. I'll start again just to practice on tooth number 30. Okay. Vertical strokes, then side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, roll, wrist, then tooth 29, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, side to side pivot, roll, wrist, and then the back going towards the mesial.